You won't believe what it meant to be called a witch in the medieval world. One word, whispered by a neighbor, a child, or a jealous rival, was enough to end your life. No evidence, no defense, just fear. And once the accusation was made, there was no going back. You'd be seized in the night, stripped, bound, dragged through the streets as crowds jeered and spat. But the worst was still to come. Torture disguised as truth-seeking, your body stretched on the rack, your flesh pierced, your silence twisted into guilt. If you cried out, you were lying. If you stayed quiet, you were hiding something. This wasn't just ignorance, it was deliberate terror. A world where pain was proof and innocence didn't matter. Today, we uncover the horrifying reality of a medieval witchcraft accusation, where fear ruled, truth died, and survival was a miracle. Welcome to the nightmare of being branded a witch in medieval times. It always began with a whisper, a sick child, a spoiled crop, a cow that stopped giving milk. Nothing more than misfortune until someone said your name. She looked at me strangely. He muttered something under his breath. That's all it took. One whispered accusation, and your entire world began to rot from the inside. Neighbors who once shared bread now crossed the street. Friends who once laughed with you now looked away. You were no longer part of the village. You were the threat lurking inside it. The local priest might say it was Satan's work. The bailiff might nod grimly and take notes. And just like that, the air around you thickened with suspicion. You weren't questioned, you were watched. Every move dissected, every glance twisted. A woman tending herbs became a witch, brewing potions. A man who lived alone became a servant of the devil. And when they came for you, it wasn't with explanation. It was with ropes, torches, and silence. No screams, no pleas, just the cold reality that your fate had been sealed before you even knew you were on trial. It didn't matter what you said, because once the whisper started, it never stopped. This was the true terror of medieval witchcraft accusations. It didn't take proof, it only took fear. They searched your skin like hunters. Every mole, scar, or birthmark became evidence, proof the devil had touched you. Midwives called them witches' marks. Church officials said devil's teats. Either way, it meant one thing: guilt. You were stripped bare, arms held back, while cold hands examined you in silence. They used needles, blades, waiting to see if the mark bled. If it didn't, they claimed your soul was sealed. Even your pain was questioned. They said witches couldn't feel. Superstition turned your body into a battleground. Left-handed, suspicious. New herbs, dangerous. Helped heal wounds, clearly unholy. The devil didn't need horns. He wore the faces of widows, healers, the quiet and the strange. Your difference became your curse. They didn't need a confession, only a reason. Because in a world ruled by fear, being different was deadly. You weren't a person anymore. You were a warning marked by superstition forever. It came when you least expected it, at dawn while the village slept, or deep in the night when even the dogs stayed quiet. A fist on wood, a voice calling your name, not with concern but with judgment. That knock wasn't a question, it was a sentence. You opened the door to cold eyes, the bailiff, the constable, maybe a priest. No charges, no explanation, just rough hands, bound wrists, and the end of life as you knew it. Neighbors peeked from shutters. Some crossed themselves. None stepped forward. Helping a witch was heresy. Sometimes they let you grab a cloak, sometimes not even shoes. You walked barefoot through the mud, through the village that once welcomed you. But they didn't take you to court. They took you to the chamber, a stone room with no windows, where questions were knives, not words. From the moment they knocked, you weren't a neighbor, you were the accused, and you were never meant to return. It wasn't justice, it was theater. You were led into a room already turned against you, wooden benches filled with faces that didn't blink, didn't smile. The judges wore robes, but not mercy. The priest held a Bible, but not truth. And you? You were already guilty. No lawyer, no defense, no chance. They asked questions you couldn't answer. Why did the milk curdle after your visit? Why did the child fall sick after you touched her hand? There was no logic, only suspicion, and every word you spoke twisted tighter around your neck. You denied everything, but denial was expected. Proof you were lying, you confessed, but confession was demanded. Proof you were damned. Witnesses came forward, neighbors, even family. They told stories, half true, half feared. You once whispered to yourself, witchcraft. You gathered herbs at night, devil's work, and the crowd nodded. Not because they knew, because they were afraid not to. This wasn't about guilt. It was about fear, control, purity. You weren't on trial. You were a sacrifice, offered up to calm the village, cleanse the sin, and feed the fire of ignorance. When the sentence came, it didn't shock you. It only confirmed what you already knew. You were never meant to leave that room free. They called it questioning, but it wasn't. It was breaking. Slowly, deliberately. You were tied down, wrists raw, ankles twisted. Darkness all around except the flicker of torches and the cold glint of iron tools. They asked your name again and again, though they already knew it. What they wanted wasn't your name, it was your soul. The rack pulled until your joints screamed. The thumbscrews crushed bone like twigs. Hot irons kissed your skin. And through it all, they whispered the names of others, friends, family, anyone you might betray to make it stop. The more you cried, the more they smiled. Pain wasn't punishment, it was proof. And the more you suffered, the more certain they became that you were lying. They said true witches didn't bleed, that they couldn't feel pain. So if you screamed, you were faking. If you didn't, you were cursed. It was a trap with no escape. Confess and die a witch. Refuse and die a heretic. In this room, truth didn't matter, only pain did. And pain always gave them the answers they wanted. This wasn't justice, it was performance, and your body was the stage. At some point, your mind broke before your body did. You lost track of time, forgot your own voice. All that remained was pain, shouting, and pressure to speak. So you did. You said what they wanted. Yes, you danced with the devil. Yes, you flew on a broom. Yes, you cursed the neighbor's child, spoiled crops, dried cows. None of it was true, but truth didn't matter, only relief. And when you confessed, they smiled, not with pity, but victory. Your story was theirs now, twisted and filed away. Then came the names. You didn't want to give them, but you did. Friends, midwives, the quiet widow down the lane. Each lie made their case stronger, and you weaker. They called it a confession, but it was survival, a final attempt to stop the pain. You weren't a witch, just broken, alone. And in the end, your words weren't yours. They belonged to fear. It wasn't delivered in silence, it was read aloud, loud enough for the whole village to hear. They wanted witnesses, because your punishment wasn't just for you, it was a warning. The judge stood tall, voice steady, your legs barely held. Guilty of witchcraft, consorting with the devil, spreading harm. The words echoed, cold, final, unforgettable. They paraded you through the streets, hands bound, hair matted, feet bare. Children pointed, women crossed themselves, men threw stones. You weren't human anymore. You were the enemy, exposed. The scaffold stood like a stage. Some came from fear, others for the thrill. Execution was punishment, but also entertainment. As they tied the rope or lit the fire, the crowd didn't flinch. They watched. cheered, prayed louder than ever, because if the witch burned, the village was clean. If the devil had a face, it was yours. This wasn't justice, it was a performance, and everyone came to watch you vanish in smoke. They didn't just kill you, they chose how, with ritual, spectacle, and fear. Each method ended the same, but each carried a message. Fire was their favorite. They said it purified. Tied to a stake, smoke stole your breath before flames reached skin. They called it mercy, your soul cleansed as your body turned to ash. But it was a show, a fiery warning above every rooftop. Rope was quieter, not kinder. You climbed the scaffold, legs shaking, lips praying. If the noose snapped your neck, they called it swift. If not, you kicked, gasped, and the crowd watched. Water was the cruelest trick. Bound, thrown into a pond. If you floated, you were guilty. If you sank, innocent, but drowned. No matter the method, the end was the same. You didn't die for what you did. You died because they decided you were a witch. You were gone, but your name wasn't. It lingered in doorways, echoed in whispers, clung like smoke that never cleared. Children were warned not to say it. Old women crossed themselves when it was heard. But they remembered. The ashes cooled, but fear stayed warm. They claimed the village was safer, that evil was gone. But deep down, they knew. Nothing had changed. Only now you weren't there to blame. Your home stood empty. Your garden grew wild. The herbs you once tended became weeds they feared to touch. Some swore they saw your ghost in the fog. Others said milk soured near your door. Superstition doesn't die with the body. It lives in silence, suspicion, and stories retold. And those who accused you, they slept easier, but never well. Because if it happened to you, it could happen to anyone. Even after the ashes, you were still burning. You'd think it stopped when the fires died, when the noose hung empty, but it didn't. The fear stayed, the faces changed, the words shifted, but the urge to blame, to punish the different, that never left. Today we don't say witch, we say outsider, troublemaker, threat. We don't light torches, we spread rumors. We drown people in headlines, shame, and silence. And still, all it takes is a whisper, one accusation, one fear disguised as justice, and the crowd gathers. Witch hunts weren't about witches. They were about control, fear, finding someone to blame when life made no sense. It never really ended. It just evolved. The fire still burns. We just don't see the flames.